You're listening to ControlTalk Now, the Smart Buildings Podcast.
With the man, the myth, the legend. Ken Smyers and Eric Stromquist.
ControlTalk Now, the weekly podcast with building automation and smart building control news you can use.
Now, here's Eric.
Hi, welcome to ControlTalk Now for the week ending November 8th, 2015. My name is Eric Stromquist, and we talk all things controls, from smart buildings controls to HVAC controls to DDC controls. But hey, what would the show be without the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Thank you very much, Eric. I tell you what, I love the week that's up. Get me excited, and I can tell you we're getting a really good show. I mean, just briefly, we've got all kinds of cool people. We've got a great interview with Therese Sullivan. We have a pub talk with Mike Marston. We have Ask a Control Expert segment that's getting better and better. We have the nomination period that's coming to a close. We're going to start talking about this and these incredible awards that are happening to the superstars in our industry. And then we also have just a brief reminder that it's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
A lot going on this week, Kenny. You're absolutely right about that. And so let's break down the ControlTrends Awards here for a minute, big dog, because the nomination period ends November 15th. And I tell you what, this response has been overwhelming. A lot of new players coming into the game. I think you might see a lot of new people that making the finals this year, and people are voting from all over the world. So the response has been great, but encourage you, especially if you know you're one of the ones that have been around for a while. Reach out to your network. It's not too late to get them to nominate. We got a special treat next week. We'll have Marc, Petock, our master of ceremonies, will be in town, and we will be announcing the finalists for the 2015 ControlTrends Award. So exciting stuff, huh, Kenny?
It sure is, Eric. And just to give you an idea, we were saying about the globability of ControlTrends. We have over 30 countries that have already been involved in a nomination portion of the ControlTrends Awards. And then last year, I think we had 42 countries that were actually involved in the voting. So I think it's very important for everybody to understand how it's think global, act local, but it is an amazing response, like you said. We've got countries that I really, truly have never heard of before participating in the ControlTrends Awards, and they've got their favorites. And it's really important to understand that, there's heroes, our common denominator is building. So that's my theme. I'll stop it one of these days. But we went over to Paris, we went to England, we went to, different places in Germany. And what we saw was that no matter where you're at, air conditioning and heating are so essential. Pushing air and water through buildings, as Scott Cochran said, it's critical, and it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere all the time. And when we went into hotels, we'd go over and we'd look over at their controls, and we'd look at the thermostats. We took a look at the different systems. We saw the advancement of that in ocean is just leapfrogging in Europe. And so it's really exciting because the ControlTrends Awards gives everybody a chance to really and truly cite their heroes, their internal champions, and their fabulous products that help make us more efficient and make it a better world.
It really does, Kenny. And it's a global event. So, I mean, we could have winners from overseas in some of the big categories. I mean, EasyIO, is they're obviously a global country, but it's very, very exciting. And again, please take a minute, fill your nomination ballot out, blast it out to your network. One of the big categories, Kenny, that's getting huge response is the ControlTrends Building System Automation System Integrator of the Year Award. So that is a new category for us. But the awards are going to be spectacular, Kenny. We are going to have just an unbelievable event in Orlando at the Hard Rock Cafe Sunday night before the ControlTrends Awards. So it's going to be a big event. And a special thanks, Kenny, to all our sponsors. I mean, the Honeywells, Belimoâs, DG Logic, J2 Innovation came on this year, Johnson Controls, KMC Controls, Contemporary Controls, the list goes on and on. So we really appreciate all our sponsors and encourage you to definitely check our sponsors out. I mean, in terms of products. Most of the people that are involved in ControlTrends, the companies, just have phenomenal products. And of course, the Sierra Monitor, our friend Varun and his team. So new sponsor there as well. So it's going to be exciting, huh, Kenny?
It sure is, and I mean, we could just go on. ACI, Tritium, Vicon, KMC, you may have mentioned them already. In Belimoâ, we mentioned them. BASSG, Alper and his folks came on. Blue Ridge Technologies, Connect Air, Thermocon, I believe Delta, Neptronic, Luis Malgares and his team from Montreal are all sponsors. And like you say, what's really exciting to me too about is the location. Chicago's ferocious, and if you've ever traveled to Chicago in January, you're like, okay, you spend as little time outside as possible. Where this year is going to be in Florida, and I think that's just a more open atmosphere. I mean, people are going to probably parlay some more time with their family or vacations, whatever, because it's just a great opportunity. But it's also in conjunction with the AHR show, and we're not impacting negatively on the AHR show. We're working cooperatively with those guys, the Clay family. They do a fabulous job with the AHR show for over 60 years, and it's just probably one of the most important events, if not the most important event in our industry. So we're feathering very nicely. We're ducktailing into a great momentum, a great time, a great location, despite the fact it's in January. So we're going to see a lot of people.
It's warm down there, buddy. Going to be warm. Well, hey, Kenny, I tell you what, it's kind of exciting. We get a lot of questions on control trends, so we created a new segment, and I think we're going to go into that segment right now. It's kind of self-explanatory.
Sounds good.
Ask a controls expert. Ken and Eric reach out to the global ControlTrends community to get your controls questions answered. Now, here's your controls question of the week.
Okay, this question was sent in by Franklin from Florida, so let's hear what Franklin's question is for a controls expert.
This is Franklin from Florida. I'm looking at a couple different DDC systems here, and I noticed Johnson has a FX asset tool. I was wondering, would that save me time and money in programming?
I think it's a great question, Franklin. And to get the answer to this question, we reached out to controls expert Chris Lane from Johnson Controls. Chris is a senior product manager, winner of Best Technical Support at the ControlTrends Awards. Very knowledgeable individual. So, Chris, can you answer Franklin's question?
How much money can FX assets save? Well, for starters, I consider FX asset to be more of a money maker than a money saver. And let me explain. FX Asset's a tool that streamlines the project management tasks of a controls job, starting with the takeoff. What's nice about FX Asset is that it speaks your language. You don't need to know RFX part numbering or item descriptions or even how many you need. You simply need to tell it the kinds of mechanical systems you have and the control specs, and it does the hard work for you. For example, you tell FX Asset simply by checking a box next to the selections it offers. The air side of the system includes a mixed air single duct type air handling unit, check, with a heating and cooling coil, check, and the spec calls for single speed fan control, check, discharge air temperature control, check, with enthalpy economizer, check. Then you select the type of VAV boxes, like cooling with reheat, check, controlled from a zone sensor with temp-oc and warm cool adjust, check, 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 and so on. And once you've finished describing the mechanical system and the control strategies, that's when the FX Asset tool really takes over. It automatically creates for you the required material list with all the appropriate FX and JCI part numbers, the estimate, and the bid, including all the required submittal paperwork like cut sheets and control drawings and sequences of operations. The proposal it creates is very professional. It's got a cover sheet, warranty statement, everything. And most of all, it's accurate. It's all based on the selections that you've made. If you're successful and get awarded the project, you can then use FX Asset to automatically create the purchase orders for the material you need, to create the installation documentation, like the wiring and the termination details. FX Asset even creates the controller software used for programming the FX PC controllers. Imagine that. All of this adds up to a significant amount of time savings. It could add up to be several hours worth, depending on the project size. And the time you save on this kind of project overhead is yours to do with as you please. So you know how last week when we had daylight savings period ended and you got an extra hour of sleep? Well, FX Asset is just like getting that extra hour and then some with every project you do. So my question back to you is what are you going to do with your extra hours? Meet more customers? Bid more projects, finish more work, make more money. That's how FX Asset is a money maker. Anyways, hope that answers your questions. Thanks.
Hey, special thanks to Chris Lane from Johnson Controls on the FX Asset Tool. Well done. And Franklin, thank you for your question. Jubbin, we've got your question set up for next week to get it answered. And if you have a question for a controls expert, you can just email it to controltrends@gmail.com, and we will find a Control Trends expert from around the world to answer your question. And Kenny, I mean, you've used the FX Asset Tool. We have too. I think Chris gave a great answer. I mean, the Johnson has a great DDC product line, but that FX Asset Tool really, drills down the amount of time it takes to estimate, configure, order, and program a job.
Eric, I think it is probably, of all the tools I've seen, and there are some great tools out there from all the manufacturers now, where you can use it for, your valve schedules, and you can use it for VFDs, and you can do a great deal. But that tool, that asset tool, is I think one of the most amazing consolidations of effort I've ever seen. You talk about reducing duplicities. Imagine starting with one document that actually leads to the purchase order being forwarded to the distributor, who forwards it to the factory, and none of that works. No more retyping. And I think most importantly is that the contractors I know work so hard, and they're good at DDC, they're good at systems integrations, and they really spend a lot of time in the fields doing the jobs where they probably have the weakest Achilles heel is in the paperwork. And I know several people over the years that have had issues where they just can't get can't get that 10% that's being held in retainage because they didn't finish the paperwork, they didn't finish the drawings, they didn't finish the sequence of operation properly, and imagine that being done as you're at the very onset. I mean, you can actually send that in with your proposal for approval, and that's exactly what the customer is going to get. So it really meets the expectation theory. These people expect professional documentation. The asset tool gives it to them, and then just to add a little bit more to the pie, there, Johnson's coming out with an asset light. And this is nice. This is a no charge. You have to register through their software manager, but you want to talk about a tool, and not even and it's given to you for using Johnson. It's just an amazing tool, and I think Chris Lane is a consummate professional.
Oh yeah.
He's got 30 plus years probably in the industry, but he still is fresh and dynamic. And I just thought it was a great presentation. Great answer. Thanks, Chris.
Great answer, Chris. And Johnson Controls, a platinum sponsor for the 2015 Control Trends Awards, and they're all over the nomination ballot, including the FX Asset Tool. So if you like what you hear, you might consider nominating them. And we have lots of presentations on how the FX Asset Tool works on Control Trends. You can just type in FX Asset Tool or Johnson FX Asset Tool in the search bar, and should bring you up to several instructional videos on that. All right, Kenny Smyers, tell us about our first post.
I'd love to, Eric. Our first post is from Mr. Fred Gordy. And Fred, of course, is our cybersecurity expert. He's the director of cybersecurity, building and facility control systems for the Smart Core. Fred's responsible for technology strategy, cybersecurity for control systems. And they've recently completed a incredible tool for cybersecurity that I was able to kind of beta test with them. What happens is a survey. You take a survey from Smart Core, and it gives you an assessment of your present cybersecurity situation, and it brings a lot of very important things to bear, very, very important considerations. Fred's post it's kind of interesting because he says that Fred says with the cyber legacy, he thinks that the president is looking to use cybersecurity as a legacy play for his last year in office. It is the one thing that most Americans, regardless of their party affiliation, will agree on and get behind. Cyber awareness is a good thing, but what does that look like coming from Washington? The only way to know about this is to be informed. So he says if you haven't seen the Cyber Policy Review Final, you might want to look it over because it has very important negative and positive aspects for business. And he's just saying he's an expert. He's just digesting it. It must be something like the Obamacare, where it's so detailed and so important, but you really don't understand the fine print until you actually experience it. And but he checked out the article by Greg Otto that came out on 10/30 on fedscoop.com, and then he gives some very, very interesting presentations with a budget. The fiscal budget is $14 billion across the federal government scope to support the administration's cybersecurity strategy. And I got to tell you, I'm for one, I'm regardless of party affiliation or political, preferences, cybersecurity to protect ourselves, from what's going on. I'm very glad to see it. It's like almost like a utility. It's almost like a military, agency, or it's a branch of the service. Cybersecurity is too important not to have a federal structure that we all can use for support. But he gives the cybersecurity strategy and implementation plan. It's on the website. It's a great post, but it gets into the key milestones of when and where Objective 1, Objective 2. But they've already begun. October 1st, 2015 was the initiation, and we got milestones. They want some of the stuff done by January 1st, 2016. I know the credit cards now, at least I believe I understand that everybody's going to have a chip in every credit card. If you're using that credit card for for commerce, you have to have a chip in it now, and this chip supposedly changes your authentication every use. And so we're seeing some pretty important strides being taken to give us better cybersecurity.
Yeah, Kenny, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I can't see anybody coming out against it. Although, there probably is a fear that, how do you do cybersecurity, but then at the same time sort of protect the individual's right to privacy? But I guess that's kind of a moot point, because some of the books we read, your guy, Future Crimes, says we're giving away so much data to Google and all these other people. I tell you what, it's
what privacy? What are you talking about?
Well, there is none. I tell you what, I actually went to read one of these things to accept. But you install software. Now they say you agree to the terms. That's hard to read, but then they want access to your location, to your contacts, to your Facebook, to your Google accounts. And if you try to say they don't have access to any of that stuff, they don't let you install the software. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So I would say that the only downside might be that your privacy rights might be violated, but I think we've already been raped, plundered, and pillaged by people and not even knowing it. I guess because they bought us a couple of drinks first or whatever, right? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see with Obama. I hope we can get that through, and it's probably, as Fred Gordy says, one of the most pressing issues and probably one of the biggest threats to our country as well as us as individuals. But you're right, man. I tell you what, Fred Gordy, man, one of the greats in our industries. Fred, if you're listening, hope you're having a great day. Fred, again, a contributor at Control Trends. We're hoping to get him and Marc Petock on the show next week with the man, the myth, the legend, and myself. So,
well, speaking of Marc Petock, guess who the next post is from?
Could it be? Could it possibly be Marc Petock?
In fact, it's Lynxspring's Marc Petock offers insight into cybersecurity. And this was a direct piggyback from the Lynxspring business partner meeting, where they really took some good time and effort to do a couple of things. But Lynxspring's always been at the forefront of cybersecurity. In fact, they've got a commercial building automation product called Lynx Cyber Pro, and Marc Petock and Lynxspring has been an industry educational leader on the subject of cybersecurity. But I was very impressed with this cybersecurity in smart buildings by Frost and Sullivan, where they say inaction is not an option anymore. In other words, security through obscurity never really worked, and it's certainly not going to work in the future. But there's a very important white paper that we have a link to on this post, and it's 25 pages of very, very good stuff.
Kenny, you're so right. We're so lucky to have Marc Petock, guys like Marc Petock and Fred Gordy in the industry. Fred's probably, one of the best in my opinion, because he started in building automation controls. So when you talk about cybersecurity vis-a-vis building automation controls, probably nobody better in the industry than Fred Gordy. And now that's what he does for a living. So his company will come in and assess your risk and make recommendations and get you fixed up. And Marc Petock, Lynxspring, another very, very well-informed guy, in the fact that Lynxspring manufactures some really incredible products, including the Cyber Pro, which is a nice solution that can fit in very nicely, that's not too complex and not too expensive. So again, we hope we get both these guys on the show next week, Kenny Smyers. So we'll catch up with those guys. But hey, talking about great people, man, we have Mad Mike Marston, and we have a segment of Mad Mike Marston's Control Pub Talk around the world. So the question is always, where is Mike? Who's he talking to? And what's he talking about? So sit back and enjoy this episode of Mike Marston's Control Pub Talk.
Welcome to Pub Talk. Here we are in Thailand with Mr. Michael Baek from Sky Networks. Yeah. So Michael, you've now started using EasyIO. You're finding it pretty good?
Yes, it was very impressive, and also it gives us a full compatibility and the expansion and the feature use.
That's great. So, we've been doing pretty well in South Korea. What's interesting about Michael is that he actually has two businesses, and one is in automation and one is in defense, which is a little bit unusual. It's very rare we see building automation and defense coming together. But I think when we met in London recently, you were telling me that what's nice about defense is they make you do everything perfect.
Yes, and especially in Korea, unlike the Western world, our local businesses heavily depend on the relationship and the connection.
Right.
That is how I developed the business in the building automation and the energy saving business, as well as the defense.
Right. That's good. Yeah, Michael was explaining to me that in defense everything just has to be perfect, and that's how EasyIO like to work. And Michael, it's a pleasure to be here with you in Bangkok, in Thailand, having a beer together in Petock. I'll say cheers and something.
Cheers, Mad Mike Marston, and I tell you what, that is what a sports bar looks like. And feedback we've given Mike for his Control Pub Talk Now is, hey, take the camera, pan it, pick out the best looking girls in the bar so our Control Trends audience can see them. But Michael Baek, man, Thailand. Mike's in Thailand, and Michael's out of Korea, I think, South Korea, if I'm not mistaken, Kenny.
Yeah, Michael Baek out of South Korea, yes. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike. Really appreciate the pub talk. Keep up the good work, because you're combining, using those social skills to bring us the best controls for the best bang for the buck with the EasyIO FG32 Plus, customer testimony, and then also spending the time in the right places with checking out that new microbreweries around the world. So we look forward to the very next pub talk. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. And also a special thanks to EasyIO, platinum sponsors of the Control Trends Awards have been since the very beginning. So thanks for that, Mike. Kenny, what do we have up next, big dog?
Next up, Eric, is a very, very good interview with you and Lars van der Haegen. And Lars van der Haegen took over 1 July, Belimoâ's group. He was formerly the president of Buildings Americas, and he was a member of their executive committee since November 2010, and he was just an amazing guy. He's been working with Belimoâ since 2000. He has an incredibly strong background in HVAC applications and industry knowledge, paired with a master's degree in business from Columbia Business School in New York and the London Business School. So I'm talking about one of the top guys in the industry, and yet you made us feel like we knew Lars a long time, because you asked him the questions, what makes Belimoâ, they're known for their quality values and world-class actuators, but tell us about how Lars makes an impact on you in the meeting with Belimoâ, who was there, and some of the things that you learned down there at the Belimoâ meeting.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Kenny, that's not me making that interview great. That's Lars making it great. Lars is just one of the really great, cool, brilliant executives in our industry. You can see him on the Control Trends Awards dancing with Marilyn Monroe, our Marilyn Monroe impersonator. So he's just got a lot of poise, a lot of grace, a lot of smarts. But I was at the Belimoâ Platinum meeting down in Aruba, and Lars, the CEO of Belimoâ, flies in from Switzerland to spend some time with us. And Lars was very accommodating with the interview. And Kenny, one of the things that really stuck out to me, and I mentioned the interview, is Lars got up and sort of talked about their philosophies, some of their philosophies, and some I can speak about and some I probably shouldn't, just meaning that I think it's almost like a trade secret the way they roll. But they are very concerned about their employees. So they make sure they take great care of their employees. They do a self-evaluation every 3 years on how they can improve as leaders. And, part of their philosophy at Belimoâ is that if there's a problem with the Belimoâ product, every employee in that company takes it serious, and it's their problem. I mean, they almost take pride in helping you solve the problem. And, being a Belimoâ distributor over the years, I can attest to that. You never get any pushback. If there's a problem, they are going to be there to help you, and I think it really shows. And Lars, in Belimoâ sort of structuring everything like a lot of people around energy, Kenny, which is kind of interesting. So they've got their energy valve, which is just a phenomenal product. We talk about that ad nauseum on ControlTrends, so I won't go into that other than to say it's worth checking out. But it's even to the point now that they've redesigned their actuators in such a way that they use much, much lower amperage. So, for example, I think most of their actuators now it's 0.5 watts or whatever, where most are amps, or where most of them are 4 or 5 to work, which, doesn't sound like a lot if you're doing one actuator, but if you're doing a couple of thousand of them, it adds up. So there's a lot of thought into that. They've just got an unbelievable new butterfly valve that they're coming out with that is designed in such a way you can use a lower torque actuator. It's really cool. I actually interviewed a gentleman by the name of Vic Coppola down there too, Kenny, and we went more detail into the products. But unfortunately, the wind noise was so bad, I'm not going to be able to use that video. But we will hopefully get Vic back on to talk some more about some more of their products. But Kenny, just a great company to work with, and I think Lars just epitomizes it. I mean, I think you'll remember the first Hall of Fame member we had was Warner Buck from Belimoâ, and I tell you what, Lars just is sort of cut from that same cloth. Just a gentleman, a brilliant guy. A hardworking guy, but also very accessible, very down to earth. And by the way, he is a nominee for the 2015 Controls Executive of the Year. So if you like what you see on the video on Lars, consider nominating him, consider voting for him. But again, Belimoâ, another company that we have to thank, platinum sponsors for the ControlTrends Award. So we thank those guys for that as well. All right, hey Kenny, tell us about our guest this week.
I'd love to, Eric. We have a very special guest. We have Therese Sullivan, principal and editor of BuildingContext.me, editor of Haystack. She's a contributing editor to Automated Buildings. Therese Sullivan has an incredible background, and that's why she's such an important voice in our industry. She has a steeped background in integrated building design, building products and control software, cybersecurity, PC software security, data management, in the enterprise software industry, and then system-on-a-chip design. So we have an amazing guest with a great background. Welcome to the show, Therese.
Hey, thank you for that great intro, Kenny.
We're glad to have you, Therese. Wow. It's good to be talking to you. Our girl in the Valley, man, she's, for our listeners who might not know, Therese is out in Silicon Valley. She sort of keeps up with it from the West Coast perspective, building automation controls. And I think last time we saw you, Therese, we were at Jim Young's Ibicon Realcomm, and boy, I tell you what, that was interesting. Intel showed up, Cisco showed up, and I think Intel sort of freaked everybody in the room out when they just said they were going to come in and do everything faster, quicker, better than everybody else. So you and me and Ken Sinclair and Kenny were all at that meeting. Yeah, and it's exciting next week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and I've got my press credential. The Realcomm's other semi-annual show, CoreTech, is going to happen here in Silicon Valley, and Intel is hosting it for them for one of the days. And so we'll be hearing from all those same people next week. Doug Free was who got up and spoke, and he will be speaking to us again from Intel. So we'll be reporting on that. Ken Sinclair, I know, is going to be there. And I'll definitely get you guys out a report about what we learned at Silicon Valley CoreTech. Well, would love that. If we send you a camera, will you do some video interviews, like live in the field with Therese Sullivan and Ken Sinclair, the man, the myth, the older legend? I don't know if I could work your cameras, but I'll definitely write things down. One of the things we noticed, Ken Sinclair was on last week, and we were talking about, again, that meeting we were all at, and sort of when we really realized that Intel, Cisco, Google were really in the space and taking it seriously. And you know, and it was interesting because that first meeting, it was like he freaked everybody out. The guy from Intel, man, it's just like threw the gauntlet down. Everybody was just sort of freaking out. But then the next year, It was a kinder, gentler Intel, and the conversation was, hey, we're going to work with all your existing suppliers to do this. And I was wondering if you picked up on that too. It seems like they've changed their messaging a little bit.
Well, I think that we've seen it roll out, and Intel is a big partner with Dell in this too. And you can see industry, regular industry folks like KMC Controls. They've made most of Intel chips and Dell gateways to put out, and the same thing, EasyIO. These products that Intel and Dell came to the market with, and Cisco I see is a little bit competitive to Dell, and that's the point actually, is you can choose your stack as you like it, what the gateway you like. Intel brings really interesting stuff to the market. Is I think that eventually their chips for their edge computing devices they have an interesting approach to security, the security fabric, they call it, but it will be in the firmware. And I think as that whole world of security evolves, Intel is going to be a really important player. We're going to get moving away from passwords to something that is really from every level, let's call it the handshake between each level of the stack. The security will be built in right from the firmware. And I think that starts with Intel. So they've got a super interesting security story. Building Internet of Things is going to cause need for a lot of chips. That's why they're in there. So I don't really see them as, going after our sweet spot.
Well, Therese, in reference to what you said, and going back to Realcomm, and they did get everybody excited, and they announced that they had an Intel Quark, the SoC X1000 software stack, and that's where I really took a second look and understood that they were going to enable our industry, not necessarily take it over. They were putting together a reusable, pre-validated board, and people like KMC now are going to pick it up, and EasyIO. These people are going to take this, this. I'm not sure about EasyIO, but I know KMC did it already. But it has some incredible technologies in the stack. I tell you, stack has become a big thing in our, not a buzzword, but a big important thing with FinStack, EasyStack, software stacks now, and you know a lot about it. Just tell us a little bit, about the importance of these stacks and how they enable our industry, not necessarily take it over.
Right. I think that we know, we're trying to make buildings better, and one of the things is we can't be always on the roof, knowing what's happening at the precision that you would need to know to run a high energy performance building. So this is actually a new need, that there be more information, more data coming from each piece of equipment. And much of that communication will be machine to machine. There won't be a person on the roof. There will be a sensor on the roof talking to an edge controller. And if there's an anomaly, then a message will go out through the cloud to say, hey, this vent isn't opened at the angle it should be opened at. And it's at that point that, traditionally the facilities manager needs to take action. A ticket has to be generated. So some of that machine-to-machine communication, that communication just didn't happen before, actually. That's a new thing. That's the edge part of the stack, the lower part of the stack that's below the cloud. And the anomalies, that's the one that gets through the cloud, that one message. And that is what will eventually, the BMS will take a record of that, will record it in the trends. It's kind of where more the traditional, a ticket will happen, and maybe a control expert will come out and check it out. So that upper part of the cloud is the part where the information you really want to know, need to know, happens and gets sent to the right person. So that's why these stacks are important. It's important to understand what's going to happen at the edge. It's important to understand when there's something that human action has to take place, how that is going to get triggered.
Sure. Eric, you remember the Daikin interview we had, they also are using Intel, and we saw a kind of a trend there too, where instead of pushing the information, the diagnostic information you mentioned, Therese, into the network, pushing it back into the building, they're going to push it out and up into the cloud, and they've got the abilities to do that with in fact, again, the stack I'm looking at, it says it has an analytics filter, there's diagnostic, data logging, cloud connector. So they've really put a tremendous amount of technology into there, and now I think I get it. This technology is going to make our smart buildings more smart, faster, because we can now go machine to machine, take out some of the human, things that not retard the system, but just it's human related, so therefore it's slower, and really get some very cool efficiencies and economies of scale.
Hey, well, listen, Trace, I've got a question for you. It's kind of interesting because it seems like, we're going from, think of traditional BAS systems as sort of being in the middle, right? So we're pushing to the edge, right, where a lot of people are playing there to gather the information and become more efficient there. But the other side of that is the cloud. It seems like everything is going to the cloud. And Therese, I heard an interesting report, and I'd like to see if this jives with your understanding. It sort of blew me away. Because you would think that Google and Apple and people like that, dominate the cloud. You would think Microsoft does, IBM does. The stat I heard is the company that dominates it is Amazon. They've got more cloud bandwidth than anybody else. So that jives with your understanding? Yeah. Yep. So Amazon's there. So the question becomes, is Amazon when's Amazon going to jump in the game?
Well, Amazon just wants to be run data centers. So in any of these markets, I don't think they can jump in very easily. I wanted to point out another one is the Intellistar, which is another company that has a great stack that includes, I think it's the Dell piece, but anyway, Terry Casey, who's been in the industry, was a head of EMEA for Tritium for years, probably has 30 years. He just gave a great interview where he discussed this too. And this just had to make their vision, those guys that had the vision, as Ken says, he's been writing about this for 15 years. Some of them have been in the business thinking about this for 20 years. And Terry Casey is one of these guys. And he just sees right now this ability to go from the cloud. And Intellistar stack is super interesting because it also includes Verizon, and that ability to have like the equivalent of a SIM chip, the equivalent of the chip that's in your cell phone up. I'm always thinking about stuff on the roof, but it's easy for me to visualize it that way. Up in that air handler, that rooftop air handler has a SIM card in it that goes to Verizon's cloud for that machine-to-machine communication. So actually, I think Verizon is being the back-end cloud provider. It is really hard to keep up with whether it's Amazon, whether it's Google, who's doing each of these pieces. But if you're creating a lot of data, you got to store it somewhere, and so someone's got to handle that piece.
Well, I tell you what, you're right. Intellistar and Terry Casey are very, very interesting. I don't know whether you caught Kenny's interview with Terry in Paris, but Kenny, talk a bit more about you really got a handle on what those guys are up to. And you talk about an all-star team, an A team, right, Kenny? Give them a feel of who the lineup is at Intellistar.
Well, you're looking at some of the veterans going back to. Well, first of all, let me just say Terry Casey is one of our favorite people in Control Trends. He's been a patient, professorial styled producer of applications. I remember seeing him back in 2008 when he was in the Middle East in Dubai working on a gigantic project there, and then he came in. He started a trend control company, which is still, I think, running 60-70% in England, still the number one DDC system. And then he went over to Tritium. He was the CEO and president of Tritium Europe. So we're talking about a guy that really knows the business well. And one of the most important, compelling takeaways I got was we asked him, Terry, is this the time in the industry where we're seeing something new happen? We're seeing that renaissance thing where we're seeing a departure. And he said that in the building IoT things, that this is the first major advancement we've made in 25 years, where we're taking all the technologies that bring, visualization, control, events, reporting, connections, analytics, and putting them in a stack, the infra stack that like Therese said, now it's connected to the cloud. So we're finally getting, the benefits of all the technology. So, I mean, it was a great interview. It was a great opportunity to hear it from, a guy that has so much background and depth in the industry. And for him to say, this is a very pivotal point, guys and girls, let's pay attention here. And some of these new products coming out with using these stacks are going to be our future.
Well, yeah. And talking about stacks, Therese, tell us about your involvement with Haystack and your article and Ken Sinclair's November publication.
Right. Well, I'm very, very excited. I think the end of that interview with Terry Casey on Memora, he said, the most important thing is, now that we've reached this point, is to communicate amongst the industry that can take these capabilities that Intel, that Dell, that Cisco have given us and make real products. The most important thing is to share information so that we can accelerate. And so I'm going to, John Petsy and Marc Petock have engaged me to do the Haystack Journal, which will pull stories from Airmaster in Australia, from any Haystack member, EasyIO, the ones we've already covered in this podcast, will contribute to this journal. We're looking for stories where they're using Haystack models, which, of course, the Haystack models, for those that don't understand in a word, is a data tagging capability that lets you do. It's both a way to name and tag devices and a methodology that allows people that use it as a group to do name things in a consistent way. I'm not saying this very clearly, but
I think you're doing great with it, Therese. It just makes moving the data around much, much easier.
It makes moving the data around much, much easier, and from building to building across a portfolio. So stories where they're doing that is what's going to be covered in Haystack Journal.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's just be devoted to the membership, allow them to communicate regularly rather than they do have their show every 2 years, but just keep that communication among the people using this technology going so they can be inspired and educated by each other. So I'm really excited about doing that because I think it's really, like you guys, I mean, everybody is so appreciative to ControlTrends for keeping this cohesiveness in the market. Anything we can do to help people, because they're in the stacks, they're using each other's technology. These stacks that we've talked about include J2, the fin piece is so important, what J2 Innovations has introduced. It's in any of the stacks we've talked about, I think that they've included that piece.
Well, Therese, real quick, and I don't want to get you off track here, but let's cycle to J2 for a minute. And I don't think you were at the last Haystack meeting, but Kenny and I have done our second Haystack, and I want to just take a minute and acknowledge Scott Minch and Jason Briggs. You probably saw the video of the presentations they did. Kenny, I mean, it's the most phenomenal thing. And this gets to your point about this is not just theory anymore. This is reality. But Kenny, walk them through. We saw the Chattanooga demonstration, and then they ramped it up another level in Colorado Springs. Just real briefly, and then Therese, I want to get back to some other players in this space. But Kenny, walk them through sort of that demo and what they did. We've got some videos on ControlTrends of it.
Well, okay, I'd love to. First thing I get to do is clear up a mistake. You teed something up for me, and I missed the ball. I whiffed at it. The lineup they had at the IntelliStar is Jerry Frank, Gil Rockwell, and Terry Casey. So I just want to go back there and say that you have three of the most incredible people in our industry working a new angle on the whole cloud and aggregation information. That's a heck of a lineup. For
people who might not know who Jerry Frank is and who these guys are, put that in perspective. Who is Jerry Frank? I mean, he's the guy, along with his son Brian, that founded Tritium, that created Tritium, right?
Father of Niagara. Yeah, he and his son, Brian, and the Frank family is born several protocols and several, operating systems. One of them was Niagara. So, yes, so he... Jerry Frank, of course, is in our Hall of Fame and everything, so we're big fans of him. And Gil Rockwell, I don't know if you know him, Eric, but he used to be, when people in the room didn't know the answer to something, they'd turn to the back where Gil was standing, and he'd give him a thumbs up or thumbs down because he really knew what was the... Project Haystack is very important, and what we saw at the last meeting, which was in Colorado Springs, was first of all the ecosystem. I was very surprised to see how many top sponsors and contributors there were to Haystack. KNX, you had Siemens, you had Building Solution Systems, you had Lynxspring, you had just one after another. You had the meter company there. You had J2 Innovation, Sky Foundry, Lynxspring, Altura, Pacific Controls, Siemens, KMC Controls, Contemporary Controls, Wattstopper, Veris, Bueno, Onicon, Wind, Daintree Networks, and BASSG, Airmaster, Connex Energy, Lobos, and a couple more. And I'm saying that growth from the first Haystack to the second Haystack was enormous. And then, like you said, the mysteries are gone. They put together a physical presentation where people out of the audience came in and were holding different, iconic representation. So they did a very cool presentation. They were called the Mythbusters, and it was an incredible presentation because this was live. And then the things that can go wrong. Normally, Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Anything that can go right did go right, and it proved to everybody how you can take KMC's near field communication. You can upgrade or upload the program to the controllers without taking them out of the box. They take it out of the box, put it on the network, discover it, and then take advantage of the tagging that's involved. So the Project Haystack, it streamlines,
it's amazing. And a company that you didn't mention, Kenny, that's there too, and I'm excited. I've got them going into the Haystack Journal is Automated Logic, because they were right. Dr. Tom, he was right there in the beginning, and I've got an article going in from Dr. Tom, because, and they're slightly different approach, not so much in the cloud, but a lot of people don't want their data going into the cloud. Systems like, and I forget the brand name of Automated Logic's BMS, but they're getting so much more sophisticated too because of things like staying in touch with Haystack. And so all these guys are competitors, but they're partners too. And it's a wonderful industry for that to see.
Well, real quick, Therese, comment on this. I think either you or Ken Sinclair came up with this this term or this concept. And Kenny and I talk a lot about it because we see this as being a major trend if you want to survive in this industry. The concept, I think it's called what is it, Kenny? Co-opetition.
Co-opetition.
Yeah. Talk about that for our listeners who might not know what that is, Therese.
Co-opetition, I think that might be a Harvard Business Review, one of those MBA's terms that came out, but because it's bigger than Ken or I. Right, but it's the idea that the whole industry has to move ahead. Maybe it's kind of like where we are with the planet and climate change. You can only get so far competing with each other. There are certain things that you have to collaborate on for all ships to rise. And that's hard for an industry. And I think our industry is a good example of one that, because of the leadership, some of these names that we've mentioned who have been at this with a vision and seeing it through over 2 decades, we've been able to carry that off where we know there'll be enough business for everybody because all these buildings need to be the new buildings. I mean, the fact of the matter is the new buildings, LEED platinums, et cetera, they're not going to work without it. They need this building Internet of Things kind of control to keep them in commission. That's Alper Ăœzmezler, another really important player in the Haystack community, is out there with the commissioning expertise and learning how they've got to change the whole design, construction, operations, and maintenance cycle. They've got to get through to MEP firms to rework their processes to understand control better. So this vision that these guys had it just keeps rippling out into these new areas.
It is so cool, Therese, and like so many great players. One of them that I think you know pretty well. Tell us a little bit about Alper and his company. Really interesting individual, and I think you know him pretty well. Tell us a little bit about Alper, where he plays in this whole thing.
Yeah, I would say he's a young, one of your older young guns.
An old young gun.
You guys,
I like that.
You guys, he was the next generation, the earlier generation young gun that is a visionary, kind of like these men that we mentioned. I wish there was a woman up there, but I can't think of.
I think we have one. Her name's Therese Sullivan.
I see a lot of, when I go to the Control Trend Awards, I see a lot of women in the crowd, and I know that they're there too. But these men had a vision, and they, if we could put it in the simplest words, they understood information technology and operations technology. They could put those two worlds together. And I think Alper is another one of the new generation that's got this background in data. He understands the IT piece really well, and software, and nimble and quick software development, kind of like DigiLogic, which is another really great company to watch what they've done in our industry, but understands that IT piece and is able to act as a real doer and go in with this. These stacks are not seamless as data is handed off from the edge through the cloud. There's everybody knows that the janitorial work of data cleansing is a big job. And Alper's, one of his products, gets in there and normalizes these streams of data. Some of them call it Lynxspring had they called it the BACnet pump. BACnet, right. And we should talk about BACnet too, that Haystack is complementary to what BACnet is doing. And if there were not BACnet, you wouldn't even have a chance. But what we've learned is that each one of the big equipment makers have kind of done a different flavor of BACnet, and even BACnet has to be normalized before it can be analyzed. Right. So Alper does things like that, the normalization, the moving things that when you don't have IT's approval, which happens a lot, to open for security reasons to open a port to the cloud. There's a requirement that data stays on site. He's got one of his products that helps a team that's trying to put in controls and use analytics that might be available in the cloud to get a server on site. So sort of solves that problem of, right. Which is another IT problem. So it's kind of like he solves those. Ken calls it hamburger helper. To use a kitchen, our hamburger to use a kitchen term, but it kind of puts these things together because they're not seamless in the handoff.
Well. So our guest right now is Therese Sullivan from BuildingContext.me. Therese is all over the IT world, and I just want to shift gears real quick, Therese. And what in the world is going on with Nest, man? We haven't heard much from them since Google bought them.
Oh, Nest. You know what? I think the most exciting thing about Nest, and that would be the other article in September where I was navigating. I was really trying to say, hey, what's happening with the microgrid? What are utilities doing? What does that have to do with comfort? What does that have to do with energy efficiency? Because we have to keep our balance among those three things. And Nest, I was kind of like, okay, it's another. You can look at it as a funny evolution of it was supposed to be an iPhone because it was so fancy and designed. But now you would never catch Steve Jobs just giving away iPhones. And that's what's happening with Nest. That and it's exciting, actually. They have deals. I forget which utility it is, but big West Coast one, I believe, that you sign on with that utility's kind of like very residential demand response, you get a free Nest. And it's because they want to collect all the data from the standpoint of understanding signatures. Sometimes they call it energy usage signature, but from the standpoint of utilities. So what I see Nest doing right now is selling right into utilities so that they can give away the thermometers or the thermostats at this point.
So this is part of Google's, you sort of turned us on to Nest was kind of important because it allowed you to sort of contextualize the environment.
The machine learning.
Yeah, machine learning. Cool.
Because you look at Google, it's a machine learning company.
Right.
And they don't care about the device. That's the difference between Apple and Google is Apple cares very much about the device, that it's their device. And what Google has is the Android operating system. You put it on any device, Samsung or a host of other hardware. They don't care about the hardware, which was what the weird thing about Nest, because it was all about the beauty of how it was more beautiful than any other thermostat. But when Google bought it, all of a sudden the beauty went out the door, and they're probably right. It's not what people care about. It was about the data, and they want to collect a bunch of data. Some people don't want their data collected, but if you sign on to this utility and you want to work their program, then you get a free Nest, and then they start. And it's not nefarious or anything. They just want to know.
Well, yet. Right. Well, Therese, I got to tell you, Kenny and I, big fans. Therese Sullivan, our guest.
Yep.
Buildingcontext.me. Check her out. Are you still doing your Flipboard thing? How do people get hold of that?
I love the Flipboard. Yeah, I get on my mailing list or tweet to me, and I'll put you on the list for my Flipboard when I send it out.
And her Twitter address is @BuildingContext. Therese, thank you so much for taking some time with us. Let's catch up. Let's make this a thing, right? Maybe once a month you come on and we'll keep up. But Therese, I tell you what, the industry's lucky. We're lucky that you sort of adopted our industry, and we really appreciate all you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That being said, Kenny, let's move on to the next post, my good friend.
Well, we're tipping our hats towards again. Lynxspring announces edge-to-edge enterprise, what they call the number 2E. So E2E initiative, new solutions and services. And again, this is probably the summary post from the Lynxspring Exchange. It was an enormous event because the preparation to do these things and do them right it's a heck of a challenge, and people don't understand how much heavy lifting goes on behind those curtains, to get this thing done and to arrange everything. But it gives Lynxspring the opportunity to really take advantage of the ecosystem that they've brought together at the Lynxspring Exchange, and when you get everybody's attention, you can really release new stuff. So they released the E2E encompasses the Onyx TM. It's an open embedded edge hardware platform using Helix, which is an open source software platform. And this is a continuous innovation framework that simplifies connectivity, device management, equipment sensor data management, and the development of applications that monitor, manage, and control equipment and devices.
Absolutely, Kenny. And I have a lot of videos from the Lynxspring Exchange. I just have not had time to format those and post them, but those will be coming next week. Lynxspring, another company, Kenny, that's really on the move, doing some really, really innovative things and great integrators that they have out there that I met at the meeting. One of the ones that's on the ballot, and we put them on the ballot wrong, we called them automated integrated out of Oklahoma City. It's actually automation integration. So our apologies to Sean and Brian Lovingood and the rest of the team for that. We got that corrected.
That's going to take us into our last post. But before we get there, I have two shouts out. I have to say happy birthday to my daughter Stephanie, who has a birthday today. Happy birthday,
Stephanie.
And to Brendan O'Mahony. He's an engineer with CRB. He's going to he's really interesting. I got a chance to meet with him 2 times recently. I got to see the applications they're working on. They are really CRB is thought leaders. They have a relentless pursuit of success, your success, which is kind of a cool marketing thing. But they're really into pharmaceuticals and biotech, food, nutrition, mission critical applications, and science and technology. But he showed me, their site and some of the incredible things they're working, the projects. I mean, we work in HVAC and it's pretty intense, but we had a question come up about PLCs and DDC systems that was interesting. But we see how, again, our world is stratified and the complexities of applications increase. The more you get into the big stuff, the high pressures, the industrials, the purified water, it's some really smart people doing a lot of great stuff. So our last post there is another great interview by the one and only Mr. Eric Stromquist, involving the ACRâ Supply. They're a controls distributor. They are members of CG&A. They've been in business almost 40 years, and it began with a family business. They're out of Durham, North Carolina, and there's a couple of guys we want to talk about, Troy Beecham, and then Kevin Parsley, who you interviewed. But it's really cool to hear how good people do so many good things for people, and how their employees are loyal and they stay their entire careers with the company because it's a great place to work, and they create value, and they appreciate the value they create in their workspace. In other words, again, every time I drive by a hospital or a large skyscraper, I go to New York and I just think all those facility managers inside there, they must have a headache every day maintaining customer satisfaction, maintaining tenant satisfaction, but really making stuff work. And the bigger the building, the harder the challenges. So these guys, they rely on people like ACRâ, who have several locations, and they just do a good job because they like what they do, and they have great employees, and they maintain them. So it's a good interview. Tell us more about Mr. Kevin Parsley. Well, I tell you what, big fans of ACRâ Supply. I've known Kevin for a while. Kevin was a youngster who worked his way up, and now he, along with Troy Meacham, pretty much run the show at ACRâ Supply. Good people, Kenny. Really, really good people. Troy Meacham, he's our type of guy, man. He's a big reader. He's up on the latest trends. The way that company rolls and how their philosophy, I mean, that seems to be like a sort of a buzzword, if you will, about, great companies seem to have great philosophies that everybody buys into. These guys have tremendous integrity. Kevin Parsley, you can sort of see it in Kevin's demeanor. Really good people. They work hard. They provide value. They provide service. But Troy, if you're listening, buddy, we want to get you on the show because Troy, Kenny, is always out there learning new stuff, learning new techniques in terms of management and leadership, and he is then applies them at the company. So there's a lot to be learned from Troy Meacham and ACRâ Supply. We've had the good fortune to hear Troy speak at Controls Group North America. They're members there. Just good people, good company. If you're in the North Carolina area, definitely check these guys out, acrsupply.com. And one of the things they're big on giving back, like you mentioned, they have a program called ACR Cares. And they're basically, helping some people in Africa through their program. So check it out. You can see it on their website as well. But, these are the type of people that make you proud to be in the industry. So again, Kevin, thanks for the interview. And Troy, just thanks for being who you are, man. Keep up the good work. acrsupply.com. Kenny, tell us about our next guest. Love to, Eric. The CEO, Alper Ăœzmezler from BASSG Projects. These guys are really on the ball. You talk about integration. You talk about the usage of the newest technologies. I mean, Alper and his folks have employed SkySpark. Probably that analytics to action cycle is really cool. They've got, they do it all. Tagging, visualization, aggregation, action. I mean, these guys, Alper, why don't you tell us a little bit more? Welcome to the show first, and tell us about what you guys do down there at BASSG.
Thank you for having me at your show. We are a intelligent building solutions company, and we write software in and around of the industry-known frameworks.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing that's really cool about controls guys that really know what they're doing, man, is like they do Skype interviews in the back of cars, man, or limos or whatever. So where are you, big dog?
I'm in Florida right now, very close to the Fort Lauderdale airport, heading back to the office.
Well, cool. So working on a job down there?
Yes, just completed a project.
Well, good. Good. All right, well, so you're kind of right at the intersection of big data, cloud computing, and cleansing data and stuff like that. Talk a bit about what you guys do and at BASS Graphics.
Yeah, we became a SkySpark distributor at early times. I think it was around 2011, and we have seen the value of the Haystack library, and we started working within the Phantom programming language, which SkySpark is written in. And we wrote a program called Project Builder Plus. It basically enables you to create the Haystack tagging model right on your desktop as an offline solution which was helping us to do the tags for the SkySpark projects within the desktop application. And after that, we started writing other applications within SkySpark and around the system. Earlier than that, we had written a BAS Maker solution within Niagara Framework that basically simplifies your PX page creation.
Very, very cool. So listen, Alper, our ControlTrends community, we have a lot of consulting engineers, a lot of end users and owners that listen to the show, as well as integrators. So what I'd like you to do is, for the owners that are listening, why should they be interested in your product? And then after you do that for the owners, then why should an integrator be interested in your products?
The owner would be interested in the product, products like the in-air case model. The visualizations look really unified throughout their projects, as well as the graphics and the application is super easy to integrate with for the visualization side. For the analytics side, we have tools to basically, once the sparks are created or analytics results are created, we have other plugins that makes it easier for them to manage the sparks, like an application called Sparko that sends the tickets, the sparks, to a ticket management system. We are also currently working on another application within the SkySpark so you can create visualization. It is called Visualytics. You use block programming to be able to visualize the sparks and your equipments. For the technicians and the contractors, we understand their problems within a daily life while they're trying to implement these jobs, and we try to make tools to make their life easier at the job site and to make it easier to implement the applications.
Albert, I'm going to break the chain here a little bit. I don't think the ControlTrends community knows already. You look so young in the pictures and whatever, but you have over 15 years of experience. Tell us how you got started and how you got involved. Ken St. Clair mentioned that you were one of the original young guns when they did that energy program back when. Please tell our ControlTrends community how you got involved in the industry and how you progressed.
I started at the age of 18, actually, while going to college. Learned about Allerton and started doing some middles and O&M manuals. That went into I seen a need of creating 3D visualizations within the community. Back then, R2 was like in 3DM R2 was in beta alpha version, and I started creating 3D graphics visualizations for the community. And from there, it evolved to becoming a graphic supplier to having to learn Java and write applications, hire programmers. And when AX came out, we wrote a program called BAS Maker. From there, we became a SkySpark distributor, hired more programmers, and created more solutions for the community.
Excellent. Also, I just thought it was very important to get some background so people understand just how steeped you are in this world, this Internet of Things, and you know, in addition to 15 years of experience, you have over 200 clients and full-time programmers on staff that are very well versed in the languages and protocols of building IoT. So what do you guys have next up? You have. Tell us about the Air Hippo first. What is that? Hang
on a second. Before you tell us about the Canadian, I want to know how you're driving at the same time you're doing a Skype interview holding the phone, man. That's just phenomenal, man.
I'm not driving. Somebody's.
There you go. All right. Now you can tell us about Air Hippo. Now you solved that mystery.
Okay. So Air Hippo, it came out to fruition because of a need to push the data from BMS system, Allerton BMS system, into SkySpark. And some of these BMS systems are using a database called Microsoft Access Database. And what we did is we were able to, we wrote a framework with Java that it gets installed within the application of Allerton BMS. It can look at the historical data and push the data to SkySpark This basically eliminates the need of IT involvement to open firewall ports. Also, Access database is almost like a proprietary database. You can still read the data from it, but you have to write a low language level code to get the data out. So our tool was able to help Allerton dealers to push the data into SkySpark to do their further analytics. And it has been used almost around 2 years now, and I could say it is a successful application.
Awesome.
Very, very cool. Well, Alper, listen, real quick, I want to thank you from the ControlTrends community standpoint. Alper and his company has come on as a ControlTrends Award sponsor, and Alper and his company's products are on the ControlTrends nomination ballot. So if you like what you see with Alper here, the guy that can do a Skype interview, drive at the same time, I mean, you might consider voting for him. The voting period ends November 15th. So get busy and vote. But again, Alper, thanks so much for the sponsorship.
Thank you very much for
having me. All right, well, listen, what trends are you seeing? It seems like everything is shifting around and changing. What's the biggest thing you're seeing that's changing? I mean, Haystack, how's that affecting you? Is that a game changer, you think?
I think it is a game changer. It makes things easier. One of the most important part is the value generation for machines to create value without any integration will be a big proposition that we will see in the future. Very cool, Alper.
Well, listen, anything else, Kenny? Alper?
Well, I just wanted to point out again to our community, to the ControlTrends community, that this guy and his team are leading the way. And to that effect, Alper, what do you have next on the agenda? Where do you see our industry? I mean, in other words, we had a show going on, and we really appreciate you being a guest, but we were kind of armed and ready. A lot of people believe that we're in a tipping point, a pivot point in our industry. That we're going to get this year, 2015, is going to be remembered because a lot of things happen and change. And I see the stuff you're pushing. What do you see next happening? Is this an important year? And what are you guys doing?
It is very important year. I think we will see more edge analytics in the future coming up, and that will change the paradigm as well to transactional controls. It will be very interesting from 2016 until 2020, see a huge paradigm shift within our industry.
Awesome. So what do you guys got? What does BASSG have up its sleeve? What's your next big project, or not project, but product? What technologies are you guys deploying next?
Our next product is going to be Visualytic, and it will be analytics on the edge product that will be coming up in the first quarter of 2016.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, buddy, we can't wait to see you in Orlando.
Alrighty. Alper, as always, it's very enlightening. It's great to see the youth take hold and be such an impact player in our industry. So once again, thank you. Get a hold of you if they have more questions or they're interested in your products.
They could go to bas.co. That's our short link website. bassg.com is our corporate site, and bascontrols.com is our shopping cart.
Okay, we just got a text from our live audience, Alper. They want to see a picture of the beach, man. Can you take the phone and go out the window real quick so we can see what you're looking at? Any beaches?
No, we are not close to the beach right now. We're very close to the airport.
Okay. Listen, thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll see you in Orlando, okay?
All right. See you in Orlando.
Take care.
Thanks, Alper.
Thanks, Alper. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Buddy, so another week on Control Talk Now. Hey, man, special thanks to all our guests this week. Chris Lane for answering our Ask His Controls expert question. To Therese Sullivan, buildingcontext.me. To Mad Mike Marston with his bar talk. And, of course, Alper from BAS Graphics. Thanks to all our guests this week. Listen, big week. Have a great week. And remember, Kenny Smyers, stay in control.
Indeed, Eric.
Wait for it. Kenny Smyers.